TCU football doing some work in the portal, adding a defensive lineman from Houston. I'll tell you about that next here on Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day.
You are Locked On Horned Frogs, your daily podcast on the TCU Horned Frogs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast. Please subscribe on whatever podcast platform you would prefer or on the YouTube channel. Sorry for being MIA for a couple days. Over the weekend, illness hit my house. My kids were dealing with stomach virus and they gave it to me. People with kids know how that goes. But anyway, unfortunately, some of my kids are still sick. So if you hear some background noise, I apologize. We're skipping school today as they try to continue to recover from this illness that's been working its way through the family. But we're back today. I'm excited to talk some TCU athletics. TCU baseball with a big sweep of Baylor over the weekend, give themselves at least a chance to continue to push towards the postseason as their season continues. Only 2 weekends left in the regular season. We'll also talk some basketball, but I want to start with football today as the Frogs added a new player to the fold in the transfer portal. Hakeem Ajijalaya, a defensive lineman from Houston. He played his high school ball at Katy High School and went on to play for the Houston Cougars. Hakeem's got a cool story. He's a walk-on originally. He spent 5 years at Houston and got some playing time this past season. In 2023, he appeared in all 12 games, made 6 starts at nose tackle. He is your prototypical big guy in the middle that you want to take up space, take up blocks, take up double teams, 6'2", 320 pounds. So this appears to me as another depth piece, someone who can come in and compete, but this is a response to losing Dominic Williams. This is not someone who's going to replace the production of Dominic Williams, but Hakeem can take on blocks, eat up space, do some things for you at that nose tackle position. Now, it'll be a little different this year than it has been the past couple of years because TCU is going to a 4-down front most of the time. I mean, they'll have 4 defensive linemen out there instead of 3. So you won't have, a true guy head up over the center as often that's asked to take on as much blocks. But Hakeem was a good player for the Cougars last season. As I said, appeared in all 12 games, made 6 starts at nose tackle, played 364 snaps, had 21 tackles, 10 solo, had a tackle for loss. Actually had a fumble recovery against TCU, 14 tackles over the final 4 games, had a season-high 5 tackles in the finale against Central Florida, had a tackle for loss in their season opener against UTSA. I was watching Dana Holgerson, some of his, I was just looking up some information on Hakeem, and he spoke about Hakeem Ajijalaya a few times, said he was really proud of him. He kind of exemplified what they wanted from the program itself as far as a guy who came in as a walk-on, worked really hard. He actually got an opportunity last year in that game against UTSA in the season opener because there was an injury to their starting nose tackle. And so he stepped in. He stepped in and played great. And not only did he get out there and, he just mentioned he wasn't just serviceable. He got off blocks. He made some plays. He did enough that they were like, hey, we need to have this guy in the lineup throughout the rest of the season. So I think this is a good pickup. It's somebody who's going to come in, understand their role, understand the job they need to do, and should be a good locker room presence. And TCU's done a good job this offseason of adding guys like that to the D-line room and to the team in general. Similar to James Brockermeyer, who was the offensive lineman they picked up from Alabama. He played center for the Tide. We'll see if he shifts over to guard or if he stays at center when he gets to campus. But that was another guy who had a lot of experience now, mainly in special teams. At the very least, though, you're bringing in someone who can compete in the 2 deep in the offensive line room and give you some flexibility and some options to move guys around or be there in case of an injury and possibly start as well. I feel the same way about Hakeem. He's going to be a good presence in the D-line room, but also he, at the very least, gives you somebody who can come in and compete right away for reps, be in that defensive line rotation, push Timon Mitchell, Caleb Fox, guys like that who are going to be playing on the interior, Marcus Deal, who will get more opportunities this year as a young player. And I really think on both sides of the trenches, there's a lot of potential. Now, there's not a ton of returning production, and you need guys to step up. You need some of these young players that you've been counting on, like Paul Olawale, like Marcus Deal, to be in a much bigger role this upcoming season. You need some of your newcomers to be a factor as well. But I think this makes a lot of sense, bringing in a player who is known as a leader, is going to take care of his business, and can be helpful for the defensive line. I feel like that's the type of additions we're going to see from here on out. If there's any more players that they add through the portal, this is what we're looking at. Somebody who's a veteran, who can play immediately and give some competition to whatever position group that they're walking into. Unless they go get a big-time running back, which I don't get the sense that's happening, I don't really see the need to add anybody else. I mean, they didn't lose. They obviously lost a huge name in Dominic Williams during the spring portal window. But besides that, the other guys that they lost in this portal window have been mainly good depth pieces and honestly just players that probably weren't going to see the field a whole lot. And he had, a young guy in Breon Ramsey Brooks who hadn't seen the field yet, but they were hopeful that he would eventually. It didn't work out. And so he decided to move on as well. But overall, TCU's done a really good job of player retention, and I think the additions they've made have been really smart. I think James Brockermeyer, Akeem Ajijulaya, both these guys, it's similar to NFL free agency. You need players who are going to fill immediate needs that can be ready to play right away. And maybe it's not the flashiest pickup in the world. It's not going to lead Sports Center that you add this guy. But it's important to have that type of depth and that type of flexibility on the defensive line. And, I mean, this is not just a cool story of a guy who walked on and eventually made the team. He was a factor for Houston. Now, Houston's defense wasn't incredible last year, but he played a lot of snaps. And once he got on the field and got an opportunity, he made the most of it and forced the coaching staff to keep putting him out there because he found ways to continue to make plays. So, I think it's a smart pickup, and it sort of gives them the flexibility and the availability to getting some more short yardage sets, getting some more 3-down looks potentially if Andy Avalos wants to pursue that, because they have a player like this who is your more prototypical nose tackle, eat up space, take on blocks. 21 tackles last year, 10 solo tackles, a tackle for loss, had that fumble recovery against TCU. I'll ask my friend Parker Ainsworth from Locked On Cougs what he thinks of Akeem, and I'll have more about that on Wednesday's show. But it seems like a really smart pickup by the TCU coaching staff and a good under-the-radar move over the weekend. I also saw, and I talked about this player a few weeks ago taking an official visit, but TCU had a number of visitors on campus over the weekend, mainly 2025 players, and Ty Haywood, who, depending on what recruiting service you were looking at, is either a 5-star or a 4-star offensive tackle from Denton Ryan, 6'5", 285 pounds, one of the best offensive line prospects in the country. He was on campus at TCU this past weekend. Now, the competition here is going to be crazy. Like, Ty is one of the most highly sought-after players in the country. He's got an Alabama offer, Oklahoma, Florida State, Texas A&M. The list goes on. Anybody and everybody is looking at this kid. He's a really good football player, and at least from, a physique, a body type, ability standpoint, looks like the type of guy that could play really quickly on the offensive line, which is hard to do. It's hard for young guys to step in and play at that position because of the physicality that's required of it. He was on campus at TCU this weekend. As I said, it'll be super competitive, but that would be an absolutely massive pickup if TCU could find a way to land him. Always a good sign when they at least take you seriously enough that they're going to come in person, go to the campus, and hang out with the coaching staff. So that's good news. I've said it before. I really appreciate and I'm optimistic about how Sonny Dykes and this coaching staff have attacked the offensive line over the past few seasons, because that, in my opinion, is how you win games. It's how you win titles. You have to be good in the trenches. You have to be good up front. And I think especially in the Big 12, because when we talk about the difference between the SEC, the Big 10, and the Big 12, in my mind, it's nasty NFL-ready players on the line. like D linemen who can get after the quarterback, offensive linemen who can pass block, and can be road graders in the run game. That's the big separator. And in the new Big 12, this is going to be the tough thing for all these teams. Skill guys, there's a lot of skill guys out there. There's a lot of talented guys at wide receiver, at running back. You can land 4- and 5-star skill players, maybe not 5-star that often, but you can land talented skill players no matter where you're at. Landing really good offensive linemen, defensive linemen is a tough task. And if TCU can be at the forefront of that in the new Big 12, then that's going to be a huge deal moving forward. So that's a name to watch. Ty Haywood, 5-star offensive lineman from Denton Ryan. He was on campus over the weekend. Sonny Dykes and the coaching staff trying to get him to commit to TCU for that 2025 class. When we come back, we'll talk some basketball. The TCU women, they added a commit. The men continue to be active in the portal as they try to add to a couple of commits that they already have. That's coming up next here on Locked On Horned Frogs. It's your team every day. Talk about FanDuel. FanDuel, it's the official betting partner of the NBA playoffs going on right now. Mavs Thunder game 1 tonight at 8:30. Should be a fun series. And if you're interested in the NBA playoffs or Major League Baseball, which is in full swing now, you can bet at FanDuel.com/lockedon, and I can guarantee that you can make your first bet a winning bet. And you say it's a bet. How can you guarantee it? Well, if you put $5 down, make a $5 bet, win or lose, FanDuel will give you $150 in bonus bets. It's also available for new customers on the FanDuel app, or go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. And again, one $5 bet guaranteed to make some money because they'll give you $150 in bonus bets. You can make some parlay bets. You can bet on just regular money lines, individual players, whatever the case is. FanDuel.com/lockedon, official betting partner of the NBA and a proud sponsor of the Locked On Network. TCU basketball. So the men, if you haven't kept up, they've added Frankie Collins at the point guard position from Arizona State. Also added Noah Reynolds from Green Bay. And they have a big-time visitor on campus currently. This is from Jamie Plunkett of Horned Frog Blitz 247. He does a great job covering the basketball team, also covers baseball and football as well. Trezarian White from UNC Wilmington, who's a player I talked about last week. He had an outstanding season last year for the Seahawks. Almost 20 points a game, 19.8 points per game, 6.8 rebounds, 1.6 assists, shot 49% from the field, 6'7", 190 pounds. He can play the 3 or the 4. I imagine he'll be kind of in more of a power forward role. He shot 39% from 3 last year. Again, I've said it this offseason, I need TCU to add more shooters to this team. I need them to stretch the floor, to have guys who can shoot from beyond the arc. That's the big priority in my mind for this TCU basketball team, because that was the huge kind of glaring thing in half court sets when they had to execute offensively late in games. Just didn't really have a lot of guys who could stretch the floor, who could make the defense respect them at all 3 levels of it. And so it really condensed what they could do offensively. And there were other issues too. I don't think defensively they played as well as you would expect from a Jamie Dixon team. The guard play wasn't always there. I think Texas found out in the middle of the season that if you blitz them on pick and rolls, you could force a lot of turnovers. Iowa State did that too, and then teams just continued to do it. And TCU never really solved that Rubik's Cube very well. It was honestly just kind of came down to how good was the teams they were playing on defense. And then we saw in the NCAA tournament, Utah State, they just go to a zone. Even though they were a team that played a lot of man defense throughout the season, they almost immediately said, okay, we're going to force you to shoot the ball and hit shots from the outside and force us to come out. And if you can't do that, then we'll just sit back here all day. And that's essentially what they did. But TCU trying to alleviate some of that and improve some of that with some of these additions. Trezarian White, I know he's also looking at Texas Tech. There's some competition here, but this would be a big-time pickup. One thing about next year's team, too, Emmanuel Miller is going to be sorely missed as just kind of a do-everything dude. He was the most consistent player on the team. He's going to give you double-digit points He's going to work hard on the boards, play good defense, all the little things that you need. And White stuffed the stat sheet last year as somebody who could do a little bit of everything as well. He's a great scorer, but he could also crash the glass, be a factor defensively. And so you need a replacement for what you're missing there. And this would be a big pickup in that regard as well. But he's on campus the next couple of days, so hopefully TCU can land him as they continue to try to build this roster. The TCU women, they landed a commitment from Donovan Hunter, guard from Oklahoma State. She averaged 6.8 points per game last year, 2.5 rebounds, and almost 4 assists. Shot 41% from the field, 33% from three. Here's the big thing in my mind about Donovan Hunter. She was a true freshman last year, and she pretty much started and played all season for an Oregon State team that went to the Elite Eight. So she was a factor as a young player on a really good team. She should be able to run this offense effectively. She'll join Haley Van Lith, Maddie Shear, and then Sedona Prince in the middle. Again, this makes sense from the standpoint of you add another shooter to the fold. You got shooters around Sedona Prince, so when you get the ball inside to her, she can kick it out to open players who can knock down shots. Man, this is going to be a fun team. I'm really excited about the future of TCU women's basketball. And this is also a good commitment because, I mean, so far in his tenure, Mark Campbell has really pursued a lot of veteran players in the portal. But this is somebody with, multiple years of experience. So she can be a leader on this team for the foreseeable future, provided that she has a good time here and fits in well with what TCU wants to do. But that's a big-time pickup. Madison Connor also coming back. I feel like this team's going to be able to really score the basketball, and I'm excited to see what they do offensively when the season starts. But Donovan Hunter from Oregon State, she joins the team as Mark Campbell continues to do work on the recruiting trail. I would imagine they need to target a few post players here because not a lot of depth between after Prince, but they have been very active in getting talent on this roster for this upcoming season. When we come back, TCU baseball. Did we finally turn a corner? Let's talk about that next here on Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day. Monopoly Go. If you're looking for a new game to download, try to figure out, or if you just love sports, you love competing, you should download Monopoly Go. It's free in the App Store or on Google Play. You can team up with friends for timed tournaments. You can build up each other's boards. The more you win together, the more awesome prizes you unlock. They have unique stickers that you can trade with your friends, cool new playing pieces, and hilarious emojis for taunting your friends when you smash their buildings or heist their vaults. It's the classic Monopoly game you love with some new twists. They have things that are new and exciting every day with constantly changing tournaments and challenges, unique mini games like hunting for treasure, and there's always timed events that can help you win big. Download it for free on Google Play or the App Store. Monopoly Go, again, that's for free on Google Play or the App Store. Download Monopoly Go. Do it today. So TCU baseball, they traveled down to Waco over the weekend and took on the Baylor Bears, and they got a sweep. They swept Baylor. They're now a game under 500 in Big 12 play. On Friday night, Peyton Tolle didn't have his best stuff, but he kind of battled through it. It was a 2-1 game throughout most of it. Jack Arthur had a triple when it was tied at 1, and then he scored after Ryder Robinson was able to get a sac fly and bring him in. So that was a big sequence of the game. And then Jack Arthur hit a grand slam in the top of the ninth to push the lead to 7-1. And so TCU pulled away late after kind of scuffling at the plate. Mason Marriott, Baylor's Friday starter, had a really good night. Saturday, they fall behind 6-1. Zach Morris entered back into the starting rotation. Didn't completely understand that move. Zach started the year in the rotation, had a rough time. He moved to the bullpen. It looked like he was doing better. And then I guess Kirk's thought process was, well, he's pitching better. Let's give him a chance again. But it did not work. Baylor scored 6 runs. They didn't get out of the second inning. They were just teeing off on him. But Cole Klecker came in and did some great work. The rest of the pen did some outstanding work. Ben Abelt pitched all 3 days, got 3 saves. Zach Coyer was fantastic, locking it down and allowing TCU to slowly get their way back into the ball game. And they ended up winning in extra innings. I believe the final score was 9-7. But they got it done in extra innings. They won the game. And then on Sunday, 6 runs in the first inning, 3 2-run home runs. Logan Maxwell went deep. Curtis Byrne went deep. And then Luke Boyers also hit the ball out to put the Frogs up 6-0 early in that game. And they didn't score a lot after that, but the pitching staff held up. Luis Rodriguez did a nice job over 5 innings. Bullpen came in again and did their job, and they get that sweep. So where are we now as far as the NCAA tournament goes? Projections will come out later this week. TCU has 3 more conference games left, but they actually have a weekend series with New Mexico State upcoming, as this is their bye week from conference play. And then they'll finish out with West Virginia. If they take 2 out of 3 from West Virginia at home, they will finish at 15-15 on the season. And I think at that point, you feel pretty good. I would feel pretty good about them making the NCAA tournament. I would think you probably need to win a couple games of the Big 12 tournament, but I would feel okay with, all right, you finish conference play 500, as long as you don't just go 2-Q at the Big 12 tournament, you should be able to make it. Now, the Big 12 tournament is still somewhat in question, but winning those 3 games against Baylor was significant because as of now, they have a 2.5-game lead against the Bears. Now, Baylor will play this weekend, and they won't. But they've got the advantage over Houston and BYU are basically out of it. So it's essentially one more spot that you're fighting for. And they've got the tiebreaker over Baylor. They've also got a tiebreaker over Texas Tech, who is currently tied with them in the conference standings. Bottom line, this was significant. Now, have they completely turned the corner and become a great team? I don't think so, but they took care of the business in front of them, and they're playing better as of late. Like, they've won 3 of their last 4 series. It feels like they're starting to figure it out. Now, the lineup is still an adventure. They hit the ball pretty well this weekend. It was kind of in fits and spurts, but overall, they scored the runs they had to win these games. And I'll say this, like, I know a lot of people have questions about Peyton Tolle. Why is he not in the lineup? Because at the very least, he could run into one every once in a while and hit a home run. He's been so good on Friday nights, and I think it's coincided with him not having to worry about hitting the ball anymore. And as much as the lineup's been an issue this year, the starting pitching is also an issue. They've still just got one starter. I mean, I guess Luis Rodriguez will probably get another chance this upcoming weekend because he pitched well on Sunday. I don't know what they'll do about Saturday. You know, I thought about Cole Klecker after the game was over on Saturday. It's like, well, maybe you just put him back in the rotation. But he's been so effective in the bullpen. It's kind of like Zach Morris. Like, do you mess with him mentally if you put him back in there as a starter? Because he's doing well coming out of the pen and pitching. And, I mean, he came in the 2nd inning, so it's not like he's coming in the 7th. But for whatever reason, that's just been really helpful for him. And, I mean, I think expectations change when you come out of the pen. If you throw 4 innings in a relief appearance and you keep a team scoreless or only give up a run, everybody's pretty happy with you. If you only pitch 4 innings as a starter, that's a disappointing start. So I understand that aspect of it. But I don't know. I don't know how they'll kind of maneuver that. I saw Jamie mention maybe Zach Coyer gets a chance. The MCC transfer has been outstanding for them out of the bullpen all year, which I'd be open to that. Of course, if you move him into the rotation, then you lose a really good bullpen piece. So it's always that kind of balancing act. But it does feel like they've been able to piece together the pitching over the last few weekends, even though it hasn't been perfect. The final thing I'll say about this, and I'd love to get your opinion on it. I'm wondering if they make the tournament, and that's all they end up doing, if they just make the NCAA tournament, so finish the season strong, win a couple games of the Big 12 tournament, and make the postseason, would you consider that a successful year for TCU baseball? Because expectations can seem to morph and change as the year goes on. Now, before the season, I thought this was a team that could make it to Omaha. Then things have kind of imploded. So in some ways, I'm like, hey, that's great. If they can make the tournament, that's a big deal. But in other ways, I'm like, listen, it's not enough. So I'm just curious what your perspective is. If they just end up making the tournament, finish the season strong, make the tournament, is that a successful season for TCU baseball because of the way the year's gone and just that it would be somewhat unexpected given that midway through the season I was kind of giving up on this group. So we'll see. But they're playing better lately. Again, got to give Kirk Saarloos credit. His teams tend to find a way to turn it around. in the month of May, which is admirable. I just wish they'd get off to better starts. And this year they did. They started 13-0, but then they hit a wall. We'll be back tomorrow. It's Locked On Horned Frogs. It's your team. We do it here every day.